Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This time I'll be talking to Tracey Cooke about her amazing aerial landscapes and her creative journey. Tracey is Perth-based and focuses mainly on the fascinating landscapes and patterns created by the salt lakes and landscapes of Western Australia. She brings her passion for the environment and the fragile ecologies of these locations to life in stunning colours, shapes and patterns. We discuss her creative origins, her exploratory drive to find unique locations that are rarely captured in such detail and beauty. We also touch on how she stays safe when camping in the Outback, often alone. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Tracey, welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I saw your work on Instagram and thought there is a photographer that I need to talk to. And you know, I'm really pleased that you said yes. And I've been looking at your work for a little while, and I think you know, I'd like my listeners, and I'd certainly like to hear more about how you do what you do. So, how did you kind of get started in photography, and you know, in particular drone and landscape photography?
I think I've been playing with photography for probably quite a while, probably about 10-15 years, probably about 15 years.
Yep.
And realistically it came about as some changes happened in my life, and I decided that I wanted to do some different stuff. And so I found I was just kind of walking around aimlessly, and I grabbed a camera and started taking photos. A really nice guy that I worked with was very encouraging, and he still is very encouraging. And I kind of attribute everything that I do now to the interest that he took and the encouragement that he gave me all those years ago. Yeah.
That's nice.
And then when I moved to Australia, obviously I didn't know anyone. I started out in Canberra, and that's a pretty weird place to start out living in Australia. So I just used to go for big long drives, and I would take my camera with me and I'd just take photos.
Yeah,
and it's just kind of gone from there.
There's a lot of interesting landscape around Canberra with the mountains, the Brindabellas, and you know, if you go further afield, you know, you can get down to the Snowies and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even Lake George, you know, which is half an hour out of town, you know.
Absolutely. I actually tried to drive on Lake George once, and I realised pretty quickly that was probably not a good idea, and I backed up really quick. So
no, it's
I haven't tried that again on a salt lake.
No, it's definitely not something to, well, certainly not in a normal car. Maybe a tank you might get across it.
Yeah, maybe. But it's interesting because where I was with photography, even when I came over to Australia, which was almost 10 years ago, and so driving around and all the places that I went to, it was nothing for me to do 600 Ks in a weekend just to go and have a look around.
Sure.
I'd really like to go back now, knowing what I know now and with the gear that I have now, and particularly with the drone, because I think I would see it from a whole different perspective, and I think it would be really cool.
Okay. So you came to Canberra. Where from? New Zealand?
Yep.
Whereabouts?
So born in the South Island, raised in the North Island, and just kind of got to the point where I decided that I needed to leave home at some stage. So I gave my daughter a couple of years to get used to being independent in a safe environment, and she always had the option to come with me if she wanted or not. It was kind of up to her. She'd finished school. So she stayed there and I came here, and that was kind of it. It was quite terrifying, to be frank, leaving my girl at home.
You left one of the most magnificent landscapes in the world to come to a different magnificent landscape.
I know, and it's taken.
I guess you weren't doing it for photography reasons, were you?
No, it was more about getting away from. It was getting out of staying home and staying in New Zealand and sort of broadening my horizons and seeing what I could do work-wise and everything. I was a single mum for a long time, and I really wanted to try and get ahead. It's very hard to get ahead as a single mum back in New Zealand. It certainly was.
Yeah, right.
And back then. So, there was a lot more opportunity. The pay was better over here. And so I guess I followed the money and the opportunity.
Yep, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
So you're now Perth-based. So, and looking through your Instagram feed, lots of amazing aerial shots. What is it about that landscape, I guess, that has really grabbed you, that's made you do what you want to do?
Well, it's kind of funny. I remember, so from Canberra, I went to Brisbane, and I was there for a year and met a lot of really cool photographers and sort of started getting into things there. And then I got offered a job in Perth. So I packed up all my worldly goods and bought a trailer and drove all the way over here. And as I drove into WA, as I drove through the whole country was pretty amazing. At the time, it was September. So no, what's the date today? Actually, today I've been in WA exactly 7 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So there was a lot of canola. It was canola season. So the whole way across the country, it was yellow and green. It was pretty cool. Then as I drove into WA, I saw these kind of weird landscapes that didn't really have anything in them, and I didn't really know what they were. And so I sort of investigated and found out they were salt lakes, and I hadn't really seen that many anywhere else in Australia. Obviously, now I know there's lots everywhere.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really known about it. So, I just find them really quite fascinating.
Yeah. So what is it? Is it the shapes or the...
what is it? It's the shapes, it's the colours, it's the textures, it's the changes, it's the difference from one week to the next. I've been to the same series of salt lakes probably every weekend for like a month to 6 weeks, and just even the changes that I've seen during that time span has just been incredible. And it's all really weather dependent and everything. It just changes all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say they're probably some of the nicest aerial landscapes that I've seen, and I've seen quite a few in terms of just the variation in those colours and shapes. For me, some of them are just so striking that you just look at it and go, wow, where is that? I want to go there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And to me, that's the mark of a really good photo is, I want to go there and see that and, try and not necessarily replicate it, but, I want to see that for myself,
Yeah. And there's so many salt lakes over here, like I've probably not even seen half of them yet. And it does seem to be my preferred target, I guess, my preferred shooting at the moment. Yeah.
When you go out, what are you taking with you, and how are you setting up for a shoot, I guess? So
when I go out, I've just got the one drone. I've got a little tello, but I can't really fly that outside. It gets blown away. So I've got a Mavic 2 Pro. I have 5 batteries that I charge on I have a deep cycle battery in the car. So I have it all set up to keep charging and running my fridge and everything. And then I have 2 Nikon D850s as well, and a bunch of lenses. So sometimes I'm shooting astros, sometimes I'm shooting flowers. Particularly at the moment, I'm trying to shoot the flowers.
Yeah, the wildflower season's on there. Yeah.
I'd love to do a whole wildflower season from start to finish and really get some really fantastic, for me, wildflower shots. I haven't managed to do it yet. I think I'll try and maybe put next season aside for that. I kind of forgot this time. Yeah. So I shoot astro. I'm shooting landscapes and things as well, but I'm mostly posting on my Instagram account anyway. I'm mostly posting the aerials because that seems to be what people really seem to like. So my Instagram account has, I suppose, become more about the aerials. And I'm shooting with a drone simply because I can't afford to go up in a plane all the time.
I understand.
Yeah, which is what I'd love to do, and I've done it a couple of times now. And it's completely different shooting from a drone. With a drone, you're in control of everything, and you can. I mean, some of my shots are only, maybe a meter off the ground.
Right.
There was a reel I posted earlier this week. It was just a cool little shape in some water, and literally my drone was maybe, half a meter off the surface of the water when I shot it, and then I sent it up. So you can really isolate different, patterns and things that you find, and you can get a really different perspective on them. And yet, when you're shooting from a plane, you have to see really quickly, and you have to.
Everything's about timing. Yeah.
Oh, and it's so fast. It's incredible. And with the drone, I can be a lot lazier. Well, it's not lazy, but I can be a lot more.
Take your time.
Yeah, totally. I can be more fussy.
So with the flights, I mean, I'm interested in that because, and I'm not anti-drone, and I'm certainly not anti-aerial or drone photography. But for me, I like to kind of be connected to what I'm taking the shot with, and being there. I mean, a big part of my photography is having somebody get the feeling that they could stand there or they could be there and see the same sort of thing, and give them a sense of that experience. But with I guess a drone, that dislocation or disconnection between yourself, the view that the drone has, the view that you're looking through the viewfinder or your phone or whatever it is that you're controlling it with, how do you sort of relate that to how you make the image? I mean, because you can obviously see what the drone sees, but you can't necessarily see everything that the drone might need to see to be in exactly the right position.
Yeah. And so in that respect, generally I'll send the drone up. It's quite funny. I have all these good intentions of sending the drone up and doing a proper reconnaissance type, journey through the area to see what there is. But then it's kind of like, people who like bling. All of a sudden I'll see something and I'll go, oh, hang on a minute. And I get completely swept up in whatever it is that I've seen. And then I'll go over and I'll have a look and I'll shoot it a couple of different ways and I'll shoot it at different heights and everything. And then I'll go, oh, hang on a minute. You're supposed to be, having a proper look around, realizing that I've only looked at a tiny little bit.
Yeah.
And so I go back up and have a look at something else, and then I'll find something else. And then before I know it, I'm out of battery and I've still got one charging. So I've gone through 5 batteries and I'm starting to lose, battery power. And I'm like, oh, damn it. I really should have done that properly. I shouldn't have got so swept up in it. So I do need to plan better, and I do need to be a bit more controlled perhaps when I'm flying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What about planning a trip? How do you decide where to go and what it is that you I mean, you said you've been to the same sort of salt lakes now 6 times or so.
That was a couple last year when it was nice and easy. It was a quick trip and I didn't have to stay out overnight if I didn't want to. Right. But no, normally I have a Jeep Wrangler, I have a rooftop tent, I have drawers on the back, I have a fridge, I have all of the gear that I need, and I decide I'm going to go to this salt lake or to that salt lake. I'll kind of look at where I've been before and where I haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see how I feel, how far I feel like I want to drive, and I'll have a look around and see if there's anywhere that I can kind of camp pretty unobtrusively. It's a little hard to camp unobtrusively in a bright yellow Jeep, but I seem to manage it pretty well. So yeah, and then it just really depends on where I think I want to go.
Yeah, okay. So when
there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, how far would you go for a shot? On a typical journey, and what's the furthest you've actually gone out in?
I went out to Paynes Find.
Okay.
I don't know how far I don't really take much notice of how far things are. I tend to think of it more in hours of driving.
Right. Okay. So in hours of driving, how far would that be?
Um, sometimes 9.
Okay. Yeah. Western
And
Australia is a big place. So.
it's huge. And if you try and just limit it to a little bit, then you're kind of limiting where you can go.
Yeah.
I love going up to Lake Ballard. Unfortunately, I've only covered a tiny little bit of it, and I think I'd like to cover it in a plane. I still think I'd like to do that because there's a bunch of places around and on the way there that I could shoot if I took a plane from Kalgoorlie.
Yeah, right.
I think it really depends on the time of year or what has been happening with the weather as to whether you'd get any decent images or not.
Yep.
And then it would depend on how low you took the plane to how you'd go with that as well. But so Lake Ballard is about, I think, 9 hours roughly from my place. I know there's a heap of camping spots on the way, and I know the back roads to go. So I would just jump in the car. I'd probably drive for about 4 or 5 hours after work, camp out and get up early in the morning, and then be driving again and be there by sort of 9 o'clock in the morning. Should be there.
Okay.
Yeah. I do tend to push through a lot. I know you're not supposed to drive after, a certain time because of kangaroos and stuff like that. So I do try and be mindful of that. If my mother ever listens to this, I never drive when I shouldn't.
All right, we won't tell them.
Exactly. But yeah, you just kind of try and push through. And if I'm driving, late at night, then I stick to more main roads where there's less likely to be wildlife out at night.
Yeah. So I guess that brings me to some of the risks. If you're going out alone and into the outback, how do you avoid that Wolf Creek sort of situation?
I've never watched it, and I never will ever.
I don't blame you.
I might have a couple of things in my vehicle that will help me to feel safer, and hopefully I would be able to utilize if the shit hit the fan at any time. But I try really hard to pick where I go and where I park and how I park, and I sleep pretty lightly.
Yeah, right.
So particularly if I'm on my own. Sometimes I have a housemate who sometimes comes with me, and he'll put his tent up sort of over there. The way I see it is that if anyone's going to come and kill me, they'll probably try and kill him first because he's easy pickings.
Yep.
And during that time when he's getting murdered, I've got the chance to get away.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've thought through it all.
sounds like you've thought about it way more than I had when I asked the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is scary. It can be scary.
I mean, it's unfortunately a reality of the place where we live. If you're out in a remote location in the middle of the night, and you don't hear a car pull up, but it pulls up and somebody gets out, you really want to know who it is and why they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you sleep light, with something in your hand, and you know exactly what you need to do if you need to get the heck out of Dodge really fast.
So what about the wildlife? Overseas listeners will be saying, oh, what about snakes? What about spiders? What about scorpions and dingoes and whatever else?
So I can cover all of that. I have a rooftop tent. So I'm a Kiwi. I'm terrified of spiders. You have huge spiders over here. I remember driving home from Yass to Canberra once, and I happened to look at my side mirror, and there was this huge, massive spider on the mirror, on the outside mirror.
Yeah.
Well, I was terrified, and all I had in the car was some papers. So I pulled up in a little town under a light, and I got out and I bashed the hell out of the spider until he fell off the car with these papers. I threw the papers and ran, jumped in the car and took off before he could jump back on the car. So,
yeah.
I've been in Australia nearly 10 years. I've seen maybe 3 snakes, and 2 of those were on the road, crossing the road.
Yep.
And one of them was taking off into some bushes further up.
Yeah.
I've only seen a scorpion that a kid pointed out to me, and the only spider problem I've had is the one with it sitting on my car mirror. So actually, it's really not as bad as people think.
No, I know. It is interesting talking to. I mean, I've got a sister-in-law from the UK, and she was originally terrified of coming out here even for a holiday. And then she came out, and my brother-in-law convinced her to come out, and yeah, she absolutely loved it. They drove from Brisbane all the way down to Sydney, where we are, and then down to Melbourne in a camper van, and she had the best time. And she said she wants to come back and live. So
Yeah.
It isn't as scary as people say, And I grew up, went into Boy Scouts and whatever, did camping and traipsing around the bush for, many, many years before I ever picked up a camera. And I think in that time I have seen about 5 snakes in the wild.
Yeah.
And
they're just not there. And I
almost trod on, but,
wow.
But I pulled my foot back, and he just sort of went about his business, and I just waited until he went about his business and then carried on down the track.
Yeah. I make a lot of noise when I'm walking along. So if I think that there might be snakes, because I actually forget that there's these things called snakes, and there's these things over here that can kill you.
Yeah.
And then I'll be in the middle of some bushes or something, and I'll think, oh shit. And then I sort of freeze, and then I start stomping really loudly, and I just get the heck out of where I am, thinking this actually could be somewhere where snakes would like to hang out. And so I just get out and go right around. I take the long way.
Yeah, no worries. So how do you think where you live has influenced how you shoot?
Oh, definitely. I think since I've been in WA, I've got my photography for myself has really taken off. I mean, I had some nice photos and things before, but it was just kind of something I did to keep me occupied. I would go for a walk after work down to the beach and take my camera.
Yep.
I had a cat then that would come for walks with me, and so I'd take photos of her down by the beach and things. But over here, it's I have an ISO monitor. I have 2 big, huge, heavy DSLRs, the drone and everything, and I love to use my gear. So whenever I can. At one stage, I thought I might want to do weddings and things like that. I've done a couple of weddings. To be honest, I'm more of an introvert. And so going out into the bush or going out around Salt Lakes or wherever on my own is actually really easy for me, and it's far less stressful than being around a whole lot of people and trying to herd cats and highly stressed out cats at the same time. So it's nice to do it. I did one for a good friend, and I did one for my auntie back home. So I think I would do that kind of work if it was on that kind of a basis, but I wouldn't do it commercially. I would do my head in. I take my hat off to people who do wedding photography and stuff. They must be mad, but they're very good.
People that do commercial and sort of portraits and weddings and whatever, and particularly people that do baby shots and whatever, I really admire in terms of their resilience. So I certainly couldn't do it. I don't have the patience personally, and I like the fact that landscape doesn't talk back, doesn't ask you questions, doesn't move when you don't want it to, often.
Doesn't blink. And it's just there, and it's just easy.
Then doesn't complain about the result when you give it to them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I haven't had that, but like I said, I haven't done any commercial stuff, so I think I've been okay so far.
Yeah.
I would like to do some portrait work, but I'd like to do it where it was able to have some, and I know portrait photographers and portrait work has meaning for the people who are shooting it and everything like that. I'd quite like to do some work with with domestic violence survivors and things like that. What that would look like or how to get into that, I'm not entirely sure. So it just kind of sits at the back of my head that that's something that I'd like to get into at some stage. So I do some, practice doing some portraits and things like that. But I'd like to do something where it wasn't necessarily for money, but it was to help people and to give them a better sense of themselves, or to help improve their their own view of themselves and how the world sees them, kind of thing, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. For people that don't know the area around Perth and Western Australia, you know, obviously people have this notion of what the outback is like. How would you describe, you know, the areas that you go and shoot, and how, you know, what would be the things that people visiting those locations should be on the lookout for?
They're very dusty. The dust is very red and it does get everywhere. I prefer shooting sort of in the winter time because there's less flies around. If you're going to go out to those places anytime, probably after, I don't know, probably getting into October, the flies are going to start to come. So when I do fly in the summer, I have a long sleeved, really light shirt on. I'll have some Bali pants and stuff on, and then I've got fingerless gloves that are UV protection for my hands, but also they stop the flies crawling on me and stuff. I can't fly with a fly net on because it obscures my vision, so I just kind of have to go into this kind of almost semi-zen sort of state to try and ignore the flies as much as possible. So but they do get hot. You just need to make sure that you have lots of water and that you are prepared. It gets cold at night, so having warm things and cool things and things to protect you from the sun and stuff are really important.
Yeah, cool.
And top up at every gas station.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you know, fuel and water and everything can be a bit hard to find when you need it if you haven't topped up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what about the actual landscape itself? How would you describe that to somebody, you know, in terms of trying to build a picture in their minds?
It's very dry. It's very arid. I always have a sense whenever I'm out there. I always think back to what the people who used to live there. So the pioneers and everything. You know, the settlers. The Aboriginals have it pretty much down pat. They understand the land and they know how to work with it. But those poor pioneers, those poor gold miners and everything, I
turned up from England and Cornwall and whatever, and went, what the hell have I got myself into here?
So I have a real appreciation for the hardships they faced and how they got through. And then when you're sitting in the middle of a salt lake at night, like I've done this a few times, particularly at Lake Ballard, you sit in the middle of, or quite a way into the middle of Lake Ballard, and it's nighttime and there's a million trillion stars above you and there's nothing else. And the winds whip up on the salt lakes at night. They really seem to whip up, and it's almost like you can hear the ghosts of people past. You wonder who died out here and what happened and that's when you really get that whole big sense of, you know, how did they survive and what happened to those that didn't survive and where are they? And you can almost kind of feel it. It's eerie, but it's actually really cool. It's not scary.
Yeah. No, I'm getting an absolutely beautiful picture in my head anyway.
The colours are just amazing. Like you drive over a hill and you don't really see them when you're standing on the ground, but when you send the drone up even just a little bit, the colours and even on the Nullarbor, I know so many people who have driven across the Nullarbor and they say, oh, it's so boring. It's a really horrible place. You know what? I could happily spend a week to 2 weeks out there exploring. Yeah. It's just amazing. And when you're looking at it from a higher perspective, the higher you go, the color changes and becomes more intense. And depending on the time of day, or depending on what the light's like and everything like that, you just get some incredible, amazing vistas. It's amazing. It's just beautiful. It really is.
Have you, in talking about the Nullarbor, have you explored any of the sinkholes and, you know, sort of?
No, not yet.
Not so much the caves themselves, because you kind of really want to be a you know, very skilled spelunker to get into those. But I have seen some fascinating drone shots in and around some of the areas there with the sinkholes, and
Yeah, cool.
yeah, I mean,
Once we get
I
past,
suppose another thing to put on your list.
well, yeah, I know. I've got a long list. But definitely I want to go back to the Nullarbor because the first plane that I shot from was at Lake Eyre, and someone whose work I really admire and whose aerial photography I first saw, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. And then when drones came out, I thought, well, I wonder if I can do something nowhere near that level, but
Yeah.
sort of, start to have a look at that stuff. And anyway, he said to me one day, I ran into him at a photography thing, and he said, I said to him, you inspired me with your aerial images, and I went out and I bought a drone and sent the drone up, and God knows what he thought when I said that. It was quite, thinking back on it, I thought it was quite funny. And he said, go up in a plane. He said, I challenge you to go up in a plane. And I thought, right. So I saved up and went over to Lake Eyre and flew over that, and it just blew my mind. It was just the most amazing thing. And then coming back, we stopped along the Nullarbor. There was a little town called Cooke, and I'd read about it in a Qantas magazine years ago, and I thought, well, there's a little town called Cooke. My last name's Cooke. I should probably go there.
Why
so
not?
I did. So yeah. And it was interesting. The school was there. I camped in the grounds of the hospital. So the hospital was completely knocked down. You could see the layout and the borders and a couple of the bricks and things like that. And I just camped in the car park, and the old school was there. There was and there was quite a bit of history. It's still part of the transnational whatever rail that goes through.
Yep.
There was a few dingoes out there, I'm pretty sure. There was some bright, shiny eyes looking back through, reflecting the campfire, which was a bit weird, but that's okay. They can't climb up a rooftop tent, I'm pretty sure. And if anybody wants to tell me that they can, I'm just not going to listen. It was just... And then flying the drone sort of out from there and stuff, and just sending it up and looking at the colours of the Nullarbor and stuff. It's just beautiful. You can go out there and do macro and everything. There's so much to explore. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your images in particular, I don't think I ever realised how many shades of red and brown and orange there actually are. And I think that's one thing that your work has really portrayed as, I mean, and I'm not saying it's monotone in terms of they're the only colours that you'll see, but it's just phenomenal, the range of colours that you were able to bring out.
It's incredible. I generally prefer to fly first thing in the morning and then sort of last thing at night. So I don't like to fly sort of in the middle of the day or anything. I know that I've got all the filters and everything like that, but depending what I'm after and what I'm looking for, and depending on the weather, if it's kind of cloudy, then I'll fly. But if it's just blue sky and everything, then I tend not to sort of fly around those times of day. The batteries go down pretty quick. It's pretty hot, and you don't get the same colors coming through. But when you've got that beautiful, nice golden light.
That early morning and late evening light. Yeah,
it's really, really pretty.
The quality of light at that time is, I guess, why a lot of people, listening to this, have probably got into landscape photography in the first place. Because you see that golden light or blue hour light or whatever, and you just go, "Oh, I'm in love with this. I want to see that every day."
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the most memorable place that you've shot, and why?
Oh, wow. Good question. I don't know. There's the pinks of the lakes in Cranbrook. There's the gorgeous greens of the ocean, the bluey greens of the ocean. There's the beautiful deep reds and the pale reds and the pinks and everything of sort of the outbackish, more regional areas. I don't know, actually. I love going out into the and it's kind of weird because I wasn't brought up in the country, but I love going out into the wheat belt, and particularly when the crops are and they're growing, because you get all those different beautiful colours. In fact, I was playing with a photo earlier today of a wheat field. I just did a bit of ICM motion on.
Okay.
So, and you've got all the greens and the yellows and just little tips of pinks because of the time of day and stuff. I don't know. I think I always go back to Lake Ballard. I love the goldfields. I absolutely love that region. I don't know why. I'm a bit nuts, maybe. I can't pick a favourite. I haven't seen enough yet. I've barely scratched the surface of it, really. It's such a big state.
Oh, absolutely. Have you shot up Broome and the Kimberley yet, or?
No, I haven't. I went up to. I was supposed to be in Sydney for Christmas last year, partying in the city on New Year's Eve, but obviously that got canned. So I drove up to Onslow instead, which is a little town just up on the coast. It's just I didn't quite get as far as Karratha.
Yep.
And if I had gone inland, I think I would have got to Karijini National Park or some part of that.
Okay,
but I had 6 days, so I literally drove, stopped, and just explored along the way. And I just see an expanse of just land with nothing, and so I would just get out and send the drone up and have a look, and then see what I got from that, which was a pretty cool way to do it. So the furthest north I've been so far is Onslow, and so far.
No, I mean I've taken a trip. I've flew into Broome, so I haven't done the drive there, but the colours up there are just astounding. You know, the greens of the foliage, the white sand, the red, ochre rocks, and and then the blues and turquoises of the ocean. Is if you're into colour, it's
absolutely.
I mean it really you see the postcard shots of those colours, and it really looks that way,
That was like Exmouth. I did stop at Exmouth just for like a half a day on my Christmas trip, and the colours were just amazing there as well. It was just it was really incredible. I applied for a job in Broome because I figured that a week wasn't going to cut it with the Kimberley and up that way. I was going to want to spend.
I don't think a week's anywhere near enough for the Kimberley.
And I'd probably want to drive, because then I've got all my gear and I know exactly where everything is. I can charge everything up and stuff. So it's on my list.
Definitely
near the top.
So, what piece of kit can't you live without?
My phone. My phone drives everything.
Yep.
Definitely my drone. Definitely at least one of my bodies. Probably the 7-200 and my car. Those are the things that I need.
Can't get around without that, I guess. Yeah.
I can't get to where I want to go without that. Definitely. I certainly probably couldn't get to most of those spots in a normal car.
Yeah.
Because I like to go where other people kind of don't go. I don't tend to want to go where other people have been shooting from and shoot those same kind of images, even from my own perspective. I like to try and go somewhere different.
Yeah, get something unique.
Yeah.
Cool. So what tips would you have for somebody that wanted to get into the sort of aerial photography that you do?
I'd tell them to get a drone, and then I would tell them to fly it. I would tell them not to worry about crashing it. I would tell them not to worry about it falling into the water at all, because chances of that happening are pretty slim. As long as you look after your gear, as long as you look after your drone, and as long as you fly it responsibly. So I have my remote pilot's license for the drone, and I've had that for 3 years now, and I felt it was really important to get that, to go through the training and to do that. One, so that I'm legit, and so that if I chose to try and get permission to fly somewhere, then it would be a lot easier than someone who didn't have it.
Yeah.
And I would much rather fly properly and know what I'm doing, and know, sort of how to handle different weather patterns and things that came up, and what the potential issues would be and stuff like that. So I would just tell them to get out there and fly and to practice, but to go out of town a little bit and to sit down, find a paddock or something and sit down and just practice and practice and practice until they felt really comfortable with it, and then to enjoy it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part, particularly what you touched on in terms of, getting your pilot's license here in Australia. Anyway, I can't talk to the rules and regulations overseas, but CASA certainly takes a dim view of people just flying their drones around willy nilly. And I know national parks aren't terribly impressed, and there's certain parks that actually ban them entirely. And the only way that you can use them is if you get special permission and so forth. And as you say, without that qualification of the pilot's license, they're very unlikely to give you any kind of shot at getting
going somewhere that you probably
getting a permit that you normally couldn't go.
Yeah. And that's not to say that getting the pilot's license is essential for anyone who wants to fly a drone, because I know there's lots of people. There's some big names who fly drones even over here in WA that and get some beautiful, amazing shots. And I'm pretty sure that they're not being idiots with it or anything like that. So it's about being responsible, and it's about knowing what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do, being respectful of people and property and things like that. I tend not to fly around town really at all. I'm lucky enough to live about 4 minutes from the beach. Indian Ocean's just over there, which is really cool. And so I can take the drone down and I can just fly it along there as much as I want to. There's not a lot of people up this end where I live. So I'm not flying it over people. And I'm always really careful if I do see people around and I want to fly the drone or anything, I'll always say to them, hey, look, I'm just going to fly my drone around here. I won't be taking photos of you, and I'll just sort of make sure that they're aware of it and they're okay with it. And I haven't had anyone get sort of grumpy or aggressive or anything at all.
Yeah. You don't want to be that person either. People are ringing the council or
I just prefer to just go and do my thing and do no harm to anyone and have nobody do any harm to me, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's words to live by.
Just stay out of trouble.
Yeah. So I guess one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is I guess the environmental responsibility, going out camping, going into what can be, a salt lake can be actually, I mean, it looks dry, dusty, and like nothing lives there, but it can be a very complex and very fragile ecosystem. And, we've all sort of heard the horror stories of, places getting trashed, people, wandering through the lavender fields, say in France, and that sort of thing, the canola fields as well, and jumping over fences and all the rest of that. Have you seen much evidence of that sort of behaviour, or in your travels? Or, I mean, you're obviously going to be responsible with what you're doing, but not everyone else is.
Not really. I noticed there's a hell of a lot of rubbish around. Like, people just don't really care about. They just dump their rubbish. There's so much rubbish through the place. It's actually really sad. I've been on my way to places and I've done a little bit of research and seen that there's a tourist spot. So one particular place, I can't remember what the town was called, but it was an old school site. And I quite like looking at those kinds of things, particularly when you go through the goldfields and stuff. You'll see, like, there's I can't remember what the name of it is. I'm having a brain fade tonight.
That's okay.
But you'll see all these old towns and things, and there's only rubble there, or there's a sign to say that there was a school there like 100 years ago or so. So we stopped at this one in particular and went and had a look, and there was all these bushes and stuff. And I thought, well, maybe there's a bit of ruins just over this little hill. Went over the hill, and it looked like it had been a city dump for a very long time. There was old tires, there was washing machines, there was somebody's dirty nappies from probably about 10-15 years ago that they just don't break down. They don't. They just sit there, and the tires don't really break down. These tires probably would have been about 20-30 years old or so.
Yeah.
Big pieces of wire and just people, it's such a throwaway society these days. There's old beds, there's old fridges, there's old couches and everything, and it's just really sad, and people just don't seem to care, and they just go and dump stuff wherever, and they don't really think about the impact it has on the animals around, or the wildlife around, or anything like that, or what it's even doing to the earth. It looks terrible. It's just really sad. That's what I do for people.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think, from my perspective, or I mean, a lot of people's perspective as a photographer, you're going out to portray the beauty, particularly, the natural beauty of the world, or the man-made. But if you're out there in nature, that's what you want to see. You don't want to see somebody's 15-year-old nappies.
No, exactly. And I always have rubbish bags on board, and I have my rubbish bag over my rear tire, of course, as well. So I do often stop and just pick up all the rubbish that's around, just to try and, just because it's just horrible, And I know that we don't have really many international visitors or anything at the moment, but I thought Australians were proud of their country, and I think everybody should be proud of their country, no matter where they are or where they live, and everyone has a duty to look after it and to treat it with respect. And I'd like them to do that.
Is there any
and get a spade,
Sorry.
And get a spade, so that when they're traveling and they're staying in the car or whatever, and they need to do anything, they do that properly with a spade and bury it.
Yeah, no, totally. Are there any photographers that you go to for advice?
Not really. I used to belong to a camera club. I haven't belonged to that for probably a couple of years now. Having said that, I have been thinking maybe I should again, just because I miss out on the workshops, and so going along and hearing someone speak, like I've heard a number of people speak over here, like Steve Wise is a fantastic portrait photographer, Tony Hewitt for aerial photography. I did a aerial masterclass with him earlier this year.
Okay, that would have been really cool. Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. It totally blew my mind. I was sitting in the plane, and I was like, Tony Hewitt's in front of me, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is just ridiculous. But yeah, it was really cool. And I was able to pick his brain a little bit. And then I do know a few people, so I'll, chat to other photographers or whatever that I know, or else I'll just Google it. I Google a lot.
Yeah. I'm very much the same. Yeah. So what about
I've got a couple of courses of Adam Williams editing courses that I'm still to get to, but luckily I have a lifetime to do those. I hope, Adam, please. So yeah.
So what about people that you think I should be talking to on the podcast? Is there anyone that that's caught your eye that you think I need to talk to?
I don't know. There's I follow a lot of people. I follow probably, I suppose, in some people's minds, too many people, but I follow a lot of people who shoot aerial and just landscapes and stuff, and mainly from places like Iceland, and I follow some New Zealanders and people like that. I'm always looking for different stuff. So as to who you should talk to, I'm not quite sure.
That's okay.
I don't know. I can think on that one and let you know.
Yeah, no worries. That'll be fine. That'll be fine. So if you weren't a photographer, what would you be? Bored
batshit. Thoroughly bored. I don't know. This is what I love to do. This is my happy place. I like nothing better than packing the car up and getting out of Dodge and going off and just seeing what there is. And even if I come back with images that I find, when I get back, I think, that's not very good or whatever, I can put that aside. But it's just even being out there and just having the opportunity to shoot. At the moment, I've spent the last 2 weekends at home. The 3 before that I was away, because I know COVID's going to get here sometime. This Delta variant's going to get to WA sometime, and it's all going to hit the fan, and we're going to be in lockdown forever. So I need to get out as much as possible to shoot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what I would do. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine a life without it. I don't know.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
I've got one last question for you, and it's for me the most important question that I can ask anybody, and that is, do you like pineapple on pizza?
I've heard you ask this before. So I like a teeny little bit of pineapple. I don't mind if there's a little bit of pineapple, but if there's a whole lot, it just ruins it.
So you're not buying the ham and pineapple, the Hawaiian at the shop.
We have Hawaiians back home as well, and when I get a Hawaiian, I will scrape off half of the pineapple because, in my opinion, they put too much on. It's nice just for a nice little bite of sweetness.
Yep.
But I don't want it drowning in it. Otherwise, I might as well just eat a pineapple.
No, good on you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much, Tracey, for talking to me. I've really enjoyed catching up with you, and it's fantastic to hear about how you do your thing. Where can people find your work?
Mainly on Instagram. My mother did remind me this morning that I need to do something about putting a website together. And I told her the same thing I've been telling her for the last couple of years. I'm on it, Mum. I'm thinking about it. I'm kind of working on it. So yeah, Instagram, Tracey Cooke Photography is where you'll find all my stuff.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks,
Tracey.
Tracey.
Very much. I really appreciate it. It's been nice talking to you.
No problem. Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'm going to be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.